Hello, everybody. Father Scott Vanderveer here with the fourth edition in our series on the pillars of Catholic social teaching. And this one is on the third pillar, which is intimately connected to the fourth. The third pillar is a principle called subsidiarity, a word that you may or may not know. Subsidiarity is paired with the fourth pillar, solidarity. Solidarity is a word that all of us know. The idea of being connected and unified with other people, no matter whether they're close by us or far away. We're in solidarity with people when we are connected to them, feel empathy for them, have a sense of what they're going through and care about it. Subsidiarity is based on focusing more on yourself and the people right around you. So you can see how those two things pair with each other, how they are, as we might say, two sides of a coin or two poles on one continuum. Subsidiarity is the idea that decisions should be made at the closest level to the people who will be affected by those decisions. So, for decisions that are about you yourself only, those decisions are best made by you, asking God what it is that God would have you do. And then you and God together make the decision that's right for you. If it's a family, then the family makes the decision. But I think it becomes a little bit more interesting when we look at people at different levels of connection. Maybe like, a neighborhood association is a form of subsidiarity because that's a smaller chunk of people than the town is or the county is. But you can see how our municipalities are divided up this way. We've got federal government, state government, county government, town government, village government, and then if you're in a place like Glens Falls, it might be a ward of the city. There's different wards of Glens Falls, parts of the city, quadrants in our case, that have unique concerns and questions. Some of them are dense populations that are living on walking streets. Others are living near industrial areas. Others are living near very natural places like I'm in right now. And so it makes sense that the people who are affected most by the decision be the ones who make the decision. The principle of subsidiarity says that it's better for the most local form of government to act when possible. Sometimes that's not possible. Certain things must be ensured for us at a high level. But most of the things that fall under that category are things like rights. We should be given our rights from a very high level. As citizens of a country, we have rights. But if you start thinking about how to govern those people, how to put limits on people's freedom, those limits ought to be very careful. They ought to come from the most local, most surgical pinpointed place. So, when a decision is being made by a federal government that could be made by a state government, the principle of subsidiarity says it's better for the state to make that decision. If the state is making a decision for all over, say, New York, when the county outside of Buffalo is going through something very different than a county on Long Island or a county in the Adirondacks, that would be something that needs to also be considered. Would it be better for the county government to make a decision about this rather than the state government? The examples go on and on and on. I think you can see what I'm saying. It's interesting that in the church, the Pope makes certain pronouncements, but not very many, to be honest. The Pope is very cautious about overreaching into a diocese or into a country where the decision would best be made by the people who live right there. So the United States Catholic bishops make some decisions that are unique to American Catholics, that Rome doesn't necessarily have the needed specialty for or doesn't have the ability to get really specific about. By the same token, the diocese makes some policies, but not all. Many policies are best made by the parishes themselves, the pastor or the pastoral council or the trustees. Together, we find the way forward. That's one of the reasons why Pope Francis introduced to us the synod model, where we ask small groups. We let individuals speak in a small group format and then get those small groups to cluster with other small groups and share together what the findings were, what the sharing was all about. Then they go to yet larger groups until we're talking as a whole church. You can see, though, that the synod model is a ground-up model, not a top-down model. A lot of people think the church is a very centralized form of government. But I think you might agree with me. If you're Catholic, that's maybe how it looks on the outside. But that's not our experience. Most Catholics are relatively unaffected by who is the Pope. The Pope guides us beautifully and guides the worldwide church with fidelity and with stability. But the real measure, the real factor that's going to affect what kind of experience you have is what your parish is like. And it might even be more local than that. It's very different to go to a certain mass where mostly older people go versus a mass where there's tons of families and children. Or a mass where there's no music and people are just responding verbally to things versus ones with a great choir and cantors and multiple instruments. In that case, your experience of the church is unique to the assembly time that you go to, a 4 o'clock or a 9:30 or whatever it might be. The church even says that the highest level of authority in our lives, the thing that we must listen to above all else, is our conscience. Now, that teaching can get abused pretty easily because it actually says that it's an informed conscience, a conscience that has consulted with the church's teaching, that is aware of the principles of Catholic social teaching, of moral decision-making, and knows what the church says about these topics. But that's why, in many cases, where the individual is able to make a decision for themselves, the church tries not to interfere. Certain things must be safeguarded by the worldwide church, but many, many things, you have to admit, are handled in our own consciences. That's why, although it might look like the church is a real top-down operation, those of us who are a part of it often would say we see it as cells in a body. Small parish groups that make up parishes, that make up dioceses, or in our case a vicariate first, then a diocese. And then those dioceses make up a national church, whatever country you're in. And then those national churches together make up the global church. Subsidiarity is an opportunity to respect people's sovereignty, their ability to make the best decisions for themselves. So what can I say? It's really important for us to recognize that we're not imposing our will on others, and we're not trying to make things more bureaucratic or cumbersome than they need to be. That is held in a healthy tension with the next pillar, which is solidarity. And that's what we'll talk about next. Be honest with me, don't you think this is interesting? It's a great framework for understanding how decisions are made, how people can live the best possible way. I'm glad that you're on the journey with me. May God continue to bless your decisions, fill your conscience with holy guidance, and may God bless the church that we all love. May God bless us all.